Most of us get into homeschooling and we're not quite sure about it. We're not 100% invested yet. And so we try it out a little bit. And then we get to that point where we're like, this is what we want to do. Today's guest, Monica Swanson, was just right where you were years ago. I love her story that she shares about how she got into homeschooling. And no spoiler alerts. I'm not going to tell you right now yet. I want you to hear it from her. But today's episode is definitely going to bless you if you are feeling uncertain. Is this worth it? How is this going to turn out? Monica has raised 3 amazing young men that she has graduated from homeschool, and she's still in the trenches right there with you with her 4th son. So today's episode, keep a listen. Go ahead, maybe pull out that pile of laundry that you need to fold or those dishes that you need to wash, or just have a seat in the nice, cool air conditioning right now because it's summertime. It's hot. But this episode is going to be good. And then she has an amazing resource that she's going to share with you as well. So listen in, friend. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where you'll learn tips and strategies that will empower you to home educate your children. I'm Leigh Nguyen, a homeschool mom of over 12 years, which includes 2 graduates. When I started homeschooling, I was pretty much on my own and was desperate for encouragement and help. My mission is to be a source of encouragement and help to you. Whether you are just beginning your homeschool journey or you're deep into the homeschool lifestyle, Little by Little Homeschool wants to help you stay the course because all the time you are investing into your children is completely worth it. If you're ready to take your homeschool to new levels, keep listening. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, Monica. Could you start us off today with sharing a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm just super excited to talk about homeschooling with you. But let's see, I live as far away as I can get from you, which is on the North Shore of Oahu in Hawaii. My husband and I both come from the Pacific Northwest. But we've been in Hawaii 23 years. So that's pretty much home. We have 4 sons. 3 have now graduated from high school. 2 graduated from college. Fun fact, the 3rd son is doing college online while being a professional surfer. So he travels the world surfing. The oldest 2 now live in Santa Barbara, California, where they're adulting, got jobs right out of college. That's the good news. And then I have a 13-year-old at home with me who I homeschool, and he is an avid golfer. So we have a lot of fun. And I started blogging after that son was born, and that's been 13 years now. The blog turned into a couple books. And as I've written mostly to encourage parents, I really wanted to reach, all the parents. So I've never talked a lot about our homeschool journey, but it was when I was writing the end of my 2nd book, Raising Amazing, that I found myself feeling like maybe I was holding something back. Like, wait a minute. I've mentioned homeschooling. People know I homeschool, but I don't talk about it a lot. And when I was really honest with myself, I was like, homeschooling isn't just part of our story. It's really the main thing. People want to know the secret sauce, like what has made my boys who they are, their faith, their character, their relationship with each other. I'm like, I got to be honest. Homeschooling is it. So I dove in and wrote my last book, which is called Becoming Homeschoolers. And it's so fun to get to just be free to just say, this is everything, no holding back. So that's what brought me to where I am here talking to you.
I completely agree with that too. And I'm like that as well. And I've not written any books or anything, but when I am talking to friends who don't homeschool, there's only so far I can kind of go. And they're like, how do you this and that, especially a lot of have younger kids. And I'm like, well, it's homeschooling. That's the lifestyle we have. And it just, it really is made them who they are. It's made who I am too.
Amen. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't expect that when you first start off, but then you get to the end and you're like, wow, that was a lot of sanctification just for myself right there.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So you kind of dove a little bit into, is there anything more about what made you want to write the book dedicated to homeschooling?
Yeah. I think at the heart of it was that my greatest desire has been to support families and to encourage families to be intentional, to be faithful, to make God the center of everything. And so I kind of exactly what you said, there's only so far you can go with that. And I've written 2 books, I've shared so much, but at the end of the day, without that time that I've had with my kids day in and day out, without that ability to really nurture them beyond what you could do after school weekends, summer break, I just know that they wouldn't be who they were. And so it's been just so fun again to be able to share the full story. And yeah, I think that's what led me to the book.
You probably felt more free to just put it
Mm,
all out there in this book, maybe, and you didn't have
absolutely.
to tweak it or
Yeah.
adjust it to fit
Yeah.
everybody.
Totally, yeah, I told my husband, I was like, I hope I haven't, like, faked anyone out, like, I wasn't trying to hold back, but I do want to respect the fact that, still, even though more and more people are homeschooling, that there's many more people out there who don't than who do, so I'm always like, I wanna help everybody," but then I'm like, "Yeah, I've gotta come out and share." Next to my boys' relationship with God, nothing has shaped them more than their homeschool journey, and they will say the same thing today, so that's pretty cool.
That is really cool. I love that you have been spending time raising godly men, and that they're just knowing
Mm.
that there's godly young men out there is just,
Yes.
it's such an encouragement to me, who also has older children out there
Mhm.
as well, that
Yeah.
it's not just your kids or my kids out there.
Right.
They've got each other, and there's so many more too, and there's so
There
many more
are.
coming up
Yes.
as well.
Yes, amidst all the bad news out there about
Yep.
that generation, I'm like, "No, there's good news too."
Such good news.
Yeah.
And they're stronger for it too, I think, as
Amen.
well. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you write in the book that someone told you and your husband at the beginning of your marriage that you would someday be homeschooling
Mm.
parents, and you would have called them crazy. How did your homeschooling journey begin? I love these
Yeah.
types of stories.
Isn't it fun? It's kinda like birth stories, like, they're always so much fun to hear. Well, that it's so true. My husband and I both went to public school in our small towns in Washington and Oregon, and from the time we met and got married, I don't think we talked once about how we would educate our kids. It just didn't even come up. I think we both assumed our kids would go to public school like we did. And my husband went to medical school in Portland, Oregon, and then his residency brought us to Hawaii. And we had our first couple kids, put them in a private Christian preschool. And by the time it was time to sign them up for elementary school, we got the oldest one into first grade. And then he's the one who came home from school one day. And I guess he had met some kids at church, maybe in Sunday school. And he was like, Mom, what if you homeschooled me next year? And at that point, I think I'd probably somewhere deep down warmed up to the idea because I had friends doing it. But my only experience personally growing up was that I thought homeschoolers were weird. I mean, there was so few in my life growing up, and I had all the stereotypes that so many people had, and some still have, that homeschoolers are socially awkward and they're all odd. And I talk about that a little bit in the book, but I changed the subject pretty quick when he brought it up, but then it really lingered and it stuck with me. And then I brought it up to my husband, who quickly said, "Oh, no way. Like, you couldn't homeschool. You are so stressed out in the morning before you even get your kids to school. How could you ever homeschool?" I was like, "Oh, you're so right. I'm a loser." I felt because I was really challenged. And no doubt that's part of my story is that 1 hour before school was probably the hardest hour of my day. And I tended to lose my temper. And anyway, I'll circle back to that in a moment, I think. But in the meantime, my husband was also like, "Homeschoolers are pretty weird, aren't they? Like, anyone I've met, they were just strange." And he's like, "And can you even do it legally?" Like, we literally had no idea what we were doing. But I did the research. I circled back over time and just said, "Hey, what if we gave it a trial run? Can I have 1 year to homeschool?" And he was like, "Okay." And by the end of that year, he was like, "No going back. This is absolutely what our family needed." And now he's the biggest fan ever. So I'm really grateful that he gave it a shot with me.
I love that story. And isn't it just kind of ironic? We have children and we never think, we don't have that conversation about
Hmm.
education.
Hmm.
But I think that is a story that is coming out of just all the
Hmm.
craziness in the world, and just all of the news and everything that's going on. And we don't need to get into all of it. Everybody knows what I'm talking
Right.
about. But
Yep. Yep.
I think that conversation is happening more and more among couples with young children, or even before. I've talked to moms who are newlyweds, and when we have
Hmm.
children, we're going to homeschool. And so,
Yes.
isn't it neat?
It is so cool. And I think that just represents how much our world has changed, because I think it's just becoming more and more clear that there are problems. And even people who 5, 10 years ago would have said, I I'm willing to put my kids in public school. There's enough good there still, are now starting to go, wow, eyes wide open. I don't know. I just don't think I can do that anymore because the world is literally changing if, year by year, but even more week by week, I'd say. So yeah, I love that it's becoming a conversation more and more.
Yeah, I do too. I appreciate that it is a conversation because we just all kind of just assume that's what we're going to do. That's what we did. I
Hmm.
don't know about you, but I
Hmm.
went to public school. That was
Yep.
just, it's just what you kind of defaulted to. But how neat
Yeah.
that your little son came home and suggested this to you, and it began to
Yeah.
soften your heart. And then
Oh,
within a
totally.
year, you guys were like, this is totally what we're going
Hmm.
to do. We're going to stick with it. And I think a lot of families are scared to jump in and do it. And then
Yeah.
they find they start and they're like, why didn't we start this sooner? And
Yes.
I'm so glad that we did and took
Yeah.
that chance. And now in the
Yep.
book and overall, just in your speaking and stuff about it, you do point out the fact that while homeschooling is not for all families, you believe if many would really try it, they would find it as a good educational solution. What questions should parents consider as they are determining if homeschool is a good fit for their family?
Yeah, it is true. I try to be careful, and I say clearly in the book that as much as I'm pro homeschooling, I'm much more pro family. Like whatever works, whatever the Lord leads you to as a family. But I do think people are not only it not only will work, but people might find that they love it if they just give it a try. So I think the main question is, does our family have a situation that is conducive to homeschooling? I have a section in the book that talks about all the reasons people don't homeschool. And I say in there that I kind of like to give some big sister love, where I call people's bluff a little bit, because some people use reasons. They say, oh, I couldn't because of ABC. And I'm like, those aren't really reasons. There's a way around that. There's something you can do, but it might take some adjustments. It might take, you know, mom finding a different job, something she can do from home, or dad, or one of the parents getting creative, sharing childcare or work responsibilities, changing your schedule. I know people who have downsized, sold a car, skipped their family vacation. Like there are ways you can do it. Where there's a will, there's a way. So I think it's more often possible than people think. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot that should hold you back. I'm like, why not try it? What's the worst thing that could happen? If you have the desire in your heart to shape your kids, to live, I always refer to Deuteronomy chapter 6, where it talks about Moses gives God's command to the people to talk about God's commands with your family as you rise up, as you walk along the street, when you lie down. I'm like, there's no greater way to do that than a homeschool lifestyle. And so, if you desire to shape your kids' hearts to know the Lord, if you want to protect them from the evils that are rampant in our schools today, if you want to spend time with them, these years fly by. You and I know that these years truly do fly by. Okay, there's a few years that go real slow, yes, but after that, they fly. So I say, if you want to really invest the most you can into your kids' lives, which I hope every Christian parent especially does, then there's almost no reason not to try it. Everyone should try it.
I agree. Everybody should absolutely try it. And I say the same thing too. The only thing you have to homeschool is you want to. Don't worry
Yep.
about the homeschool laws. You'll get that figured
Mm-mm.
out.
Oh
You'll
yeah.
find friends. You'll figure out the curriculum. You'll figure out a
Hmm.
routine to the day. There's always a way to figure out finances. There's sometimes, like you're saying, there's sometimes some really big adjustments.
Hmm.
And we've lived our entire time, most of our marriage, just on a single income, and we don't
Hmm.
take the fancy vacations because this is worth it.
Yep.
And
Percent.
our kids don't necessarily miss out on those things. And it doesn't mean that
Mm-mm.
if you homeschool and you can take the fancy vacations and you do have the dual income, that's okay as well.
Yeah.
But I think anybody can make it work as long
Hmm.
as you want to, and you have to kind of get
Yep.
your mind around that. So
Hmm. Yeah.
you have three older boys.
Hmm.
I love that you have four boys. How fun. I can just only
Yeah.
imagine your home at some times in some years, right? Was it just
Oh
like
yeah.
a,
Wild. A
yeah,
lot.
a lot of activity, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, but that's so cool. So, what are some of the other blessings that have resulted from homeschooling
Mm.
your boys?
Yes. Well, top of my personal list is things like the fact that my boys are best friends, from the 24-year-old down to the 13-year-old. They choose each other first. I mean, they FaceTime and talk. And just as we're recording, they just got back from a camping road trip in California together. Every year, the four of them go and do something out in nature alone without mom and dad. So I just love that relationship. I love that we have a good relationship with our kids. I love that my boys are really grounded in their faith. And the two that went away to college, did not deconstruct in college because they were grounded, because we had this opportunity to really help them grow deep roots and know what they believe, why they believe it, so that when they went out into the world, they were ready to have the conversations and they didn't get shaken up. And so I love all that stuff. But I mean, along with that, my boys will tell me, the two that went away to college, that they really felt prepared for college, that they say college is a lot like homeschooling. We just have to like walk down the path to our classes. But yeah, they felt really prepared. So I mean, there's so many categories of things I love about homeschooling, but I think the faith and the family relationships are at the top.
I think a lot of families go into, or even those that are looking from the outside in, they look at it and they're just focused on the education. Because what is probably the number
Hmm.
one question you get is, what curriculum do I
Oh yeah.
use?
Hmm.
And it's so good to hear from moms that have success stories like you
Yeah.
do. And
Yeah.
you're still in the trenches too. You still have a
Hmm.
13-year-old,
Hmm.
but that the relationship is really what is
Oh
so
yeah.
important.
Absolutely, yes. And I just would tell anyone, I don't think college is for everyone. I think oftentimes there's better options, but I do say that if I prepared my kids for college, I mean, I wasn't planning to write a book while I was homeschooling them. So it's not like I was taking notes and trying to be the super mom. I was the mom that said, I need to give them as much as they would get at a public school. Like I just needed to know that if they chose college, that door would be open. So I didn't do a whole lot. We kept it really simple. They had really good lives. They spent a lot of time outdoors doing fun things. And yet they still got scholarships, went to college, and got jobs. So I'm like, if I can do that, anyone can. But academics were not top of our list ever. And I'm glad now that we didn't make that the hugest priority, because everything fell into place.
I think the academics really do fall into place, and that desire
Hmm.
to want to work together on things. And it's not you
Hmm.
standing there as the
Hmm.
homeschool mom lecturing
Yep.
and you don't have to give tests. I didn't give tests. I didn't grade things. And I'm like, well, you're an A student. Everything you've passed
Yep.
and you get a 4.0. If you didn't get
Exactly.
something, let's go back and actually figure that out. And that's
Yes.
so good to hear, because a lot of parents about the college, that a lot of parents are worried
Hmm.
that their child isn't going to get into college, or that they're not going to succeed because they're homeschooled. And that holds
Right.
some families back. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yes. It's not what most people build it up in their head to think it is. The transcripts, all that, it is all very doable.
Yeah, definitely doable. And when you get to that season, you'll be able to do it. These are
Hmm.
sometimes moms who
Yeah.
have 5 and 8 and 10 year
Exactly.
olds, and they're freaking out about doing a transcript. I'm like, "Oh, just 5, 8, and 10. Just
Oh,
focus on
yes.
that, because those are probably
Exactly.
those are the years that last. Sometimes, like as you were mentioning earlier,
Uh-huh.
they're sometimes the long years, right? And then they
Yes.
get to be teens. Those years I have found just fly by so
They
much.
do. And also, I think if we're doing our job and giving our kids more and more responsibility to become more independent, by the time they're in those pre-college years, they're going to take ownership and it's going to be on them. And I think as long as we communicate that from, eighth, ninth grade on, then it's really up to them to do the work. You can be there to support them, but it's not like you have to know everything, because they're going to be independent thinkers that will motivate to do the things that they need to do.
Yeah, and to learn the things that you don't really need to learn about. I hear all. I am not
Thankfully.
yeah, thankfully, I'm not a science
Calculus.
person. I
Yes,
know
yes.
exactly, and I'll hear that from my kids, or whatever it is in business. And my
Mm,
daughter was really into alternative health, and I'm like, okay, like I'm just soaking up what you're sharing
yep.
with me. But when they find the things that they're interested in, they just go
Yep.
for it, and having that freedom to do it. So, tell me a
Hmm.
little bit about, what do you hope families are going to take away from reading Becoming Homeschoolers?
Yeah. Well, I sincerely wrote it to just offer what I didn't have. There's some great homeschool books out there, but a lot of them are a little bit more speaking to that mom who's wants the magical homeschool experience. I say the blanket under the tree with the classical literature and all the beautiful warm fuzzy stuff. But I wrote the book for the Monica back in the beginning that was like, just tell me what I need to know. Tell me I can do enough to get them, if they choose, into college. Tell me I can do this without ruining them in any way. And so it's really a guidebook. It's a handbook. I mean, our story's in there. And I open with 20 good reasons to homeschool your kids, which I think has, I've heard from a lot of homeschoolers who say, thank you. This just reminded me of all the whys. Like we get tired, we get burnt out. We need reminders why we're doing this. But then I go through preschool to college and I just step by step, here's what you need to know. And I really tried because I have written parenting books and I love to study developmentally what kids need and all that, especially in the middle school years. I take some time to talk about just what's going on in a middle schooler, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all the things, because I think it's important that we realize as we're making a choice about school, either way, whether you're homeschooling and thinking about sending kids back to school or thinking about bringing them home, what's going on in your kid. And because of that, this is why homeschooling can be such a good fit, especially in those middle school years. So I really try to point out and just help parents to slow down and go, wow, my kid's going through a lot. Maybe this is a good time to invest some time into them. And then all the way up to college. And I cover a lot of the things that are on people's minds, sports and homeschooling. I point them to the resources to help them figure that out, electives, co-ops, all the things. So it's really a guidebook and just hoping it really helps come alongside people who need to just grab someone's hand and walk through this with them.
Sounds like a one-stop shop kind of book
Yeah,
for
yes,
moms wherever they
I hope
are
so.
in the journey. And I appreciate that emphasis that you just put on talking right now about the middle school years and just how
Yeah.
that is just, I just remember being like, where did
Mm.
their brain
Oh, yeah.
go
Hmm.
for, especially my boys? I felt like I was like, where you used to, like when you were 3, you could follow like 2, 3 step commands. But now that you're 13, I say, go get your socks, and you walk away and have no idea what I said to you,
It's so
right?
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but I
so
love
true.
that homeschooling can give them that space, that buffer that they don't have to be
Oh,
on and stressed and everything, and it can just let them develop.
yes,
Hmm.
exactly. Naturally, individually, uniquely, awkwardly, beautifully. It's all good.
And I often think to myself, I think that sometimes people think of the homeschool kids, like as you're mentioning earlier, how they're just kind of weird. And yeah, sometimes, I mean, everybody's weird. Everybody has their weird kind of things, right?
Yes,
Yes. And adults have their weird things. And I think sometimes they get a bad rap because I think a lot of homeschool kids don't really care as much what
right.
others do. They
That's a
just kind of,
really good point.
yeah, they walk to the beat of their own drum and they don't really care. And
That's so good.
how freeing would that be as
Oh
an
my
adult,
goodness.
instead of going into your adulthood and being like I was so concerned what everybody thought and then realizing nobody really thought much about me and who cares? I don't even know who those people are anymore.
Oh my goodness, that's such a good point. I actually love that you say that because I talk about this socialization thing all the
Yeah.
time. And I love that you point out that maybe they don't even care. And one of the things I say in the book is, okay, well, couple things worth noting. One, most likely your kids are going to become like you. So if you're kind of weird and you homeschool, yeah, your kids are probably going to be a little bit weird. If you think you're pretty cool, socialized, they probably are too. And we all know that there's strange kids in every school and there's strange people. But I also like to say, worst case scenario, your kid grows up and they're a little bit quirky, they're a little bit odd. So what? There's worse things in the world. For example, the things that are going to happen if they are influenced and socialized by people you don't want them with. I'd take the quirky kid any day over. Give me all the weird. So yeah, I love that you point that out. Such a good point.
I totally agree. So you and I are probably watching in the past couple of years, especially that the homeschooling movement is really
Mm,
growing. But many moms, they
hmm.
have those fears about whether the homeschool education they're providing is going to be enough for their children to become successful adults. So you've graduated
Hmm.
3 sons, and we love to
Hmm.
hear about how homeschooling has given them opportunities. In other words, can you share a little bit about the light at the end of the tunnel that can dispel a lot of the doubt and fear they're feeling?
Yes, I love to do that. I just really like to encourage families to know kind of what I mentioned before that it doesn't take as much as you probably think. Certainly, if your kids are on a college track, you want to do your due diligence. And I have resources in the book that point you to all the places to prepare them. But probably my favorite things are things like kids getting internships during high school, really pursuing their passions and interests, which I think ended up making them what colleges are looking for. Colleges want to see well rounded kids. So they loved seeing that they were doing photography, they were playing music, they were leading worship at their youth group, all the things that they had the space and freedom to do because they were homeschooled. But then, yes, they went to college and they both chose really challenging majors. And did really well without mom being there checking in too much. And they both had job offers before their graduation day of college. And so now they're adulting, they're involved in ministry, they love the Lord, they're just incredible young men. And it's so fun for me to look back and go, and we did it all simply. I didn't know everything then. And so, and if your kid's super smart and they want the hard, tough curriculums, they're out there. But if you've got a kid that you're like, you know what, they're not academic, they're not going to go to college, they don't want to, you can also choose to do things pretty light and simple and let them have a happy childhood and let them pursue the things that are going to really fuel them and lead them to their future, whatever that is.
So good. That's like a mic drop right there, I think. So good. And I love that you mentioned the personalization of the education and how it can just be so specific. And I think when we sometimes are fearful if that would be okay to do, I would always encourage homeschool moms to think, how would you have flourished yourself when you were, say, 10 or 13 or 16? How great would that have been if your education was tailored to you instead of being pushed to go into maybe the calculus and trigonometry because your parents and the education system thought that you had to do that, but you weren't so good at it and you wanted to focus on other things. Yeah, it's just, it's so good. But I think parents are scared too. What does that look like? And you're saying it can be simple as well. It doesn't have to be complex.
It can, but I think all of us have a tendency to just picture whatever we had growing up is, it just feels like we have to do the same thing. So I think it takes us really being okay with having it look a little bit different. And one day that will be your normal. That will be your kids' normal. But in the meantime, you might have to break out from what you knew growing up and be okay with that. Be brave.
Yeah.
Trust God.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I feel we just feel comfortable. We feel like that's a safe thing to do. And most likely because most people are choosing that path. So it feels very safe. Their kids are going to get into college and mine too, or trade school or wherever they're going on to. And it's okay to step out of the box a little bit. And we step out of the box, break out of the box there. Our kids, I think, are going to also in their future not be afraid to step out.
Exactly. Well. And I think one important point there is just if we are homeschooling our kids and teaching them character qualities, if we're teaching them to be responsible, if they have a personal faith, then we really don't need to worry whether they do go to school after high school, whatever they do, they're going to make good choices. They're going to have the Lord, they're going to have community, all the things that they need for their future will be in place. So when you focus on the first things first, everything else falls into place.
So good. So where can the homeschool mom, she wants to hear more from you. How can she connect with you? And then where can she find your book too?
Absolutely. I love to meet new friends. My home base is my website, monicaswanson.com. And there's links there to my podcast, my books, everything else. And Becoming Homeschoolers is available now pretty much everywhere. So I hope it is a huge encouragement. There's a really great resource list. That's probably a highlight of the book is at the back. There's just a great resource list that'll point you to everything you need. But say hi if you find me on Instagram. I'm at @MonicaSwanson_. So definitely introduce yourself so I can get to know you all.
Perfect. I will link all of those, everything there in the show notes as well for the listener.
Thank you.
But thank you for joining me today, Monica.
Oh, thank you so much.
I told you, you were going to love her story of how they got into homeschooling. Isn't that amazing? Just out of the mouth of babes. Just so cool. And her husband got on the same page. And by the end of that year, they loved it. And they haven't looked back ever since. And she is just a wealth of information. And what I really appreciate is that she could just go on about her life. She has homeschooled and graduated 3. She is homeschooling her last one. And I'm sure her days are very full, and she could just go on, but she's decided to no, I'm going to stop and I'm going to invest in the amazing moms that are coming after her, which is you. And so I want to encourage you to go ahead, give her podcast a listen, check out her website. Like she said, connect with her through Instagram, and definitely go ahead and check out the links in the show notes. I will link there to her book so you can go and check it out as well. I think it's a great resource no matter whether you're thinking about homeschooling or you are already in there. There's going to be something for everyone. So thank you for listening to today's episode, and I will see you back here on the Little by Little Homeschool podcast really soon. Thank you for listening, friend. I'd love to connect with you more. You can find social media links in the show notes and share this episode with a friend who could use a boost to her homeschool. See you back here real soon.